Imagine looking into the mind of someone who sees the world not as a place filled with connections and empathy, but as a twisted game of control, dominance, and obsession. What drives individuals to commit acts so chilling they leave entire societies gripped with fear? Welcome to the dark labyrinth of the psychology behind serial killer. The mind of a killer isn't born overnight. It's shaped by a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. Research in forensic psychology suggests that many of these individuals display traits associated with psychopathy, a condition characterized by a lack of empathy, superficial charm, manipulativeness, and an absence of remorse. However, not all killers are psychopaths. Some are driven by deep-seated traumas, distorted beliefs, or a need to exert power in a life where they felt powerless. Consider the case of Ted Bundy, one of the most infamous serial killers in history.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
Bundy was charming, intelligent, and seemingly normal, qualities that masked his dark urges. He confessed to killing over 30 young women during the 1970s. Bundy's psychological profile revealed traits of narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial behavior, coupled with an inability to form genuine emotional bonds. His killings weren't just about violence, they were about domination, control, and the thrill of manipulation. Bundy's charm allowed him to lure victims effortlessly, showcasing how some killers exploit social norms and trust to carry out their crimes. Bundy's story begins in Vermont, where he was born out of wedlock and raised believing his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister. This early identity confusion may have sown the seeds of his later personality disorders. Despite his outward success in academics and politics, Bundy harbored deep resentment towards women, possibly fueled by a tumultuous breakup that triggered his violent spree. His killings followed a disturbing pattern. He would feign injury to appear vulnerable, luring women to his car before overpowering them. Bundy's ability to compartmentalize his life, acting as a loving boyfriend and a ruthless killer, reveals the chilling duality often found in organized offenders. What makes someone cross the line from dark thoughts to deadly actions? For some, it's a trigger event, a significant loss, rejection, or humiliation that shatters their fragile self-image. This was evident in the case of Andrew Cunanan, who murdered 5 people, including fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan's killings were fueled by a mix of grandiosity, rage, and a desperate need to reclaim a sense of power and importance. His story illustrates how narcissistic injuries, perceived slights to one's self-esteem, can spiral into violent retaliation. Now let's delve into the chilling story of Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. Dahmer murdered 17 young men and boys, committing acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. His psychological background reveals a profound lack of empathy, coupled with obsessive-compulsive tendencies and a desperate need to control his victims even in death. Dahmer's crimes were not driven purely by violence, but by an intense desire to possess and dominate, turning his victims into objects he could never lose. Dahmer's descent into darkness began in childhood, marked by isolation and an obsession with dead animals. His parents' tumultuous divorce further destabilized his psyche. After his first murder at 18, Dahmer's crimes escalated, reflecting his inability to form genuine connections. He would lure victims with promises of money or companionship, then drug and kill them, often preserving body parts as macabre trophies. Dahmer's case underscores how early neglect, coupled with untreated mental health issues, can spiral into catastrophic consequences. Another notorious figure is John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, burying many of them beneath his house. His public persona as a community volunteer and entertainer masked his monstrous double life. Gacy exhibited traits of antisocial personality disorder, displaying no remorse for his actions. His case highlights how some killers lead double lives, hiding their crimes behind a facade of normalcy. Gacy's abusive childhood, dominated by an alcoholic father who belittled him, left deep psychological scars. As an adult, he was known for his civic involvement, even performing as Pogo the Clown at children's parties. Yet beneath this cheerful exterior lurked a sadistic predator. Gacy's method involved luring victims with job offers, then overpowering and torturing them before their deaths. His case is a stark reminder of how appearances can be deceiving, and evil often wears a mask of normalcy. Statistics reveal chilling patterns. According to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, most serial killers are male, with an average age of around 30 at their first kill. Many experienced childhood abuse, neglect, or trauma, which distorted their ability to form healthy relationships. Their crimes often follow a ritualistic pattern, reflecting an internal script fueled by fantasies of control, revenge, or sexual dominance. But not all thriller killers fit the same mold. Aileen Wuornos, a rare example of a female serial killer, murdered 7 men in Florida during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Unlike Bundy, Wuornos claimed her killings were acts of self-defense against clients who assaulted her while she worked as a sex worker. Her troubled childhood, history of abuse, and mental health issues painted a complex picture of a woman driven by survival instincts, warped by years of trauma and neglect. Wuornos's life was marked by abandonment and abuse. Orphaned at a young age, she turned to prostitution as a means of survival. Her relationships were fraught with instability, and her mental health deteriorated over time. Wuornos's killings, often impulsive and chaotic, reflect the profile of a disorganized offender. Her case challenges traditional notions of serial killers, highlighting how gender and socioeconomic factors influence criminal behavior. While psychopathic killers like Bundy and Dahmer are driven by an intrinsic compulsion tied to their psychological disorders, there exists another category of killers who murder with clear external objectives. These goal-driven killers often commit their crimes for reasons such as financial gain, political motives, revenge, or to achieve a specific personal agenda. Their actions are typically calculated and purposeful, contrasting with the impulsive, pleasure-seeking nature of psychopathic killers. Psychopathic killers operate with little regard for others, motivated by internal fantasies, a desire for control, or sadistic pleasure. They may exhibit superficial charm and manipulate those around them to gain access to their victims. Their lack of empathy is a hallmark trait, making them dangerous in seemingly everyday interactions. On the other hand, goal-driven killers might not exhibit classic signs of psychopathy. Take Richard Kuklinski, known as the Iceman, who was a contract killer for the mafia. Kuklinski's murders were business transactions, devoid of personal attachment or emotional satisfaction. He killed efficiently, often without remorse, but his motivations were rooted in financial gain rather than psychological gratification. Understanding these differences is crucial for criminal profiling and investigation. While psychopathic killers may leave behind patterns tied to their compulsions, goal-driven killers are more methodical, often covering their tracks meticulously to avoid detection. The psychological landscapes of these individuals reveal the multifaceted nature of human behavior, where the line between monstrous and methodical is often blurred. The psychology behind these killers often includes a phenomenon known as the McDonald triad, which suggests a link between childhood behaviors like cruelty to animals, arson, and bedwetting beyond the typical age. While controversial and not definitive, these behaviors can signal deeper psychological issues if combined with other risk factors. Interestingly, the concept of the organized versus disorganized killer also helps profile these individuals. Organized killers like Bundy and Gacy meticulously plan their crimes, often blending seamlessly into society. Disorganized killers, on the other hand, act impulsively, leaving chaotic crime scenes that reflect their inner turmoil. Understanding what drives these individuals isn't about glorifying their actions, it's about prevention. Profiling techniques help law enforcement identify patterns and predict potential future crimes. By studying the behavioral cues and psychological traits of known killers, experts can intervene earlier in cases where warning signs are evident. Society's fascination with thriller killers often lies in the paradox they represent. Ordinary people capable of extraordinary evil. This curiosity is fueled by a desire to understand the darkest corners of the human mind, perhaps as a way to reassure ourselves that we can recognize the signs before it's too late. But what makes a person cross that line from normalcy to becoming a killer? Is it just the environment they grew up in, or is there something more beneath the surface? Imagine being a child, waking up every morning to a world that feels cold and hostile. This was the reality for Henry, a boy who grew up in a home where violence wasn't just an occasional incident, it was the rhythm of everyday life. Abandoned by love, surrounded by neglect, and exposed to cruelty at a young age, Henry's heart became hardened. This isn't just the stuff of fiction. Research reveals that when children experience such traumas, their worldview shifts in dangerous ways. Rather than seeing the world as a place of safety and love, they learn to view it as a battleground. A boy who should have learned to trust and form bonds now grows up unable to understand the value of human life. What begins as neglect soon spirals into anger, frustration, and eventually violence. For Henry, the seed of rage that would one day define him was planted early, fueled by the deep scars left by those who should have cared for him. As investigators tried to piece together the puzzles of serial killers, they faced a daunting question. What drives a seemingly normal person to commit such heinous acts? It wasn't until the 1970s that the FBI took an innovative step forward. A team of agents, scientists, and psychologists formed a new unit, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Their mission: to understand the psychology of these killers, to predict their next moves, and to capture them before they killed again. Enter Ted Bundy. With his charm, his intelligence, and his smooth-talking ways, Bundy had evaded capture for years. But as the Behavioral Analysis Unit began to work with the evidence, they identified patterns in his behavior, patterns that would eventually lead to his capture. This was the moment that criminal profiling began to shape the way we think about serial killers. It wasn't just about finding evidence anymore. It was about getting inside the killer's head, understanding his motivations, and using that to predict his next steps. This breakthrough in profiling became the template for law enforcement to track down some of the most notorious killers in history. What if we told you that the answer to why some people commit these atrocities lies in their brain? It's not just about circumstances or childhood trauma, there's a neurological element at play. Recent studies have shown that in some serial killers, the brain functions differently. Scientists have begun mapping the neural activity of individuals with psychopathic tendencies, and the results are chilling. Two areas of the brain, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, are crucial in regulating impulse control, empathy, and fear response. In many killers, these regions are either underdeveloped or functioning abnormally. For someone like Henry, this neurological anomaly could mean an inability to feel fear or remorse, two emotions that, for the rest of us, act as natural deterrents to violent behavior. If your brain doesn't make you flinch at the thought of taking a life, then what's to stop you? These discoveries have helped scientists understand that while environment plays a major role, a lack of basic emotional wiring can push some individuals to commit acts of extreme violence. As we've seen, there's no single factor that can explain the darkness that drives a person to kill. Whether it's the scars of a violent childhood, the chilling anomalies in the brain, or the way the media fuels the narrative, understanding these killers requires a deeper look into the complex web of psychology, biology, and society. The truth is, serial killers don't emerge from nowhere. They are shaped by a multitude of forces, both internal and external. And while we may never fully comprehend the depths of their minds, by studying them, we gain a clearer understanding of the fragile line between order and chaos in our own society. So as you reflect on the chilling details we've uncovered today, remember, the mind is a fragile thing. For some, it becomes a maze of darkness, and for others, it's the key to unlocking the very soul of humanity. If you found this journey into the minds of serial killers fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of the human experience. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep questioning.